Oh, it's a new live broadcast, is it? Okay. And it's exactly the same issue. All right, looks like we might have a bit of we might be back. I rebooted the laptop, I reset the router, I made a brand new, completely fresh stream. Yeah, I know you can't hear me, Celine Lion. I was muted. I was muted. I've unmuted myself now though, so you should be able to hear me. I also need to start this program that makes my microphone sound like it's not a potato, which it isn't. It's not a potato. I paid about 200 quid for this microphone. This should make it sound a little better. Hopefully that is nicer. Well, this is going well, isn't it? It's going to put the new link into Telegram. I'm going to stop the Rumble stream. I'm going to stop the Odyssey stream. Let's just see if we can at least get something onto YouTube tonight. We will give up with the multiple streaming. Let's just keep it simple. Audio's better. Good. Nice. Fantastic. Glad to hear that. And yeah, so where was I? Before we were rudely interrupted. Let's see how long this one lasts. So what I've done is I've minimized all the programs on my laptop, rebooted the laptop, rebooted the router, and we will see. We'll see how long this lasts. Who was I talking about when it crapped out? Oh, we went through Lionel Curtis. Oh, I was just talking about how politics is infiltrated on both sides. You got to think of the political parties kind of like when you get, if you get too drunk and you're in a pub or a club or something, and they tell you got to leave, and you don't want to leave because you're having a good time and you're not causing anyone any harm, right? You're just having a good time. See, isn't it, everybody? I'm just having a good time, aren't I? And you refuse to leave, and then two people appear on either side of you, and one puts their arm under your shoulder here, and they do the same on the other side, and they kind of pick you up a little bit, and then they just escort you outside, throw you out onto the curb. We've seen it done in films hundreds of thousands of times before. Well, those two goons who appear on either side of you pick you up and carry you and throw you out onto the street. That's what the two political parties are. It's like they're escorting everybody to the same place, regardless of which one you support or give your vote to or donate to, or who's branding you where, whatever. They're both escorting you to the same place. They're just two goons who are trying to really spoil your fun night out or your fun life on this planet, maybe you want to say. David James says, what's the title of this book? I will reveal that in a moment. Or I might reveal that immediately now that we've gone through the image. A couple of more things to mention. Control of foreign office and ambassadors. As I was saying, the diplomatic and the foreign politics and all that is very important to getting the plan done. If you have a plan which involves subverting national sovereignty so that you can bring the world's people underneath a single system, then you're going to have to be good at your foreign relations, right? This is why you have the Council on Foreign Relations, for example. This is why you have the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and every country has its own version, its own flavor for that, right? It's all about internationalism. We've talked about it on this channel. Even the word international. If you break it up, you've got nation in the middle. You got internation, AL, all that might be seen as. So you've got nation, which is the group of people that are united by a geographical area, a culture, a tradition, a history, and a language, and that sort of thing. The nation. If you inter the nation, inter means to bury in a coffin or a grave, that kind of thing. Inter nation, and then the AL at the end, you might just read that as all. All the nations are getting buried. They're getting killed because they're not useful anymore. They're no longer relevant, and that is described and admitted in not my words, not my ideas. I read about how that is the case in these two books. One of them is The First Global Revolution. That talks about it. And the other one is Between Two Ages, Zabriskie, Big New, Big. Zabriskie, Big New, Big. That's a code word for Zbigniew Brzezinski. And they tell you that. They tell you the nations are ineffective, they're no good, they're not useful, they can't solve the problems that we face. That's why we're internationalists. You know, David Rockefeller says it in his book, I'm a proud internationalist. I'm part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States. So it's not just Nick Hayes coming up with this stuff. It's in the books that I read and talk about. But if you want to do that, if you want to subvert national sovereignty because you want to bring those people under the control of a global system with one supranational structure at the top, and then you're going to have to weaken them, and you're going to have to do these sort of deals by way of diplomacy and relations, international relations and foreign relations, right? And so we've got on this arm coming down here, control of banking, and that goes all the way up. USA control of banking, because we know we had the Bank of England was kind of the first central bank, but then came the Federal Reserve. I'm not sure if there was any others established. Probably more were established in Europe. Then we got the Federal Reserve. Then we got the Bank for International Settlements, which Carol Quigley tells us is the central bank of central banks, privately owned, set up by the bankers to bring the world into this system. So control of banking is very important. Control of South Africa. So we got Africa, France, USA, Russia, Balkans, all involved, all being used, infiltrated, played with, right? Remember, Zbignew's book is America's role in the technotronic era. They have a plan, they have a role to play for every country and for the people in every country as well. And then control of the press, because of course you have to win the hearts and minds, and not necessarily, I shouldn't say win them, just control them and dominate them with information to make them go along with whatever it is that you want them to go along with. And that often includes this push-pull kind of left-right dialectic method. So you'll get this opposing conflict of ideas and opinions, but it's always within the Overton window. And there's a famous quote about you just have to control. You can allow lively debate, but only within a very narrow range of opinions. And that's the trick. That's the secret. That's one of the techniques of getting things done without waking up too many people, without too many people cottoning on to the scams and the schemes that you're pulling. So I thought I would open tonight's stream with that picture. Why? Because today is 9/11. It's a very important day. It's a very auspicious day. The world changed on 9/11, 2001. Well, actually, no, the world changed on 11/9, 2001. But here in England, where we put our dates and the different parts of the date in logical order, going from smallest to biggest, day, month, year. It's 9/11. It's the 11th of November. Whoa, see, I nearly messed it up there. It's the 11th of November, and it's Remembrance Sunday here in the UK. And it's the time of year where we reflect on the big events of the 20th century, World War I, World War II, and we remember the heroes and the sacrifice and the selfless efforts of the men and women who were slaughtered in those events. And so that's why I thought today, instead of doing our usual reading of the book that we're currently going through on the channel, I thought we'd do something a little different, and we'd do a 9/11 special, and we'd go through some books looking at the origins of war. Yes, it's the 9th of November. Did I say the 11th? Goodness me, this is confusing. It's the 9th of November, 9/11, 2025. It's a Sunday, and we're here doing a live stream. We're going to look at some books. We're going to pull out some quotes. Some of these are books that I've read before. And then we're going to read a passage from a book that I haven't read before, but I've had a few requests to read. And we'll see if the live stream survives that, because it's one of those spicy ones. And I'll say right up front, I don't endorse what this book might be saying. I'm reading the book as a historian, if I can call myself that, as a curious amateur historian who's interested in the printed word and the love and the care and the attention and the passion and the diligence that goes into creating books so that you can preserve a message and pass it on into the future. Because what we say in the UK all the time is lest we forget, right? If you type that in, there's actually a Wikipedia article on it. Let's get it up. This wasn't part of the plan. I put this into the chat on the previous stream before it got nuked. And it got nuked. So let's have a look here. Now I'm typing it in again. Oh, I didn't know that. So there's a couple of options here. Let me move things around. And let's have a look. Okay. So if you type in "lest we forget" over onto Wiki, then you can, there's a few options. It says it may refer to a phrase in the poem Recessional by Rudyard Kipling. I don't know a lot about his poetry or the man himself, but I do know that I think he came up with he was the origin of the white man's burden. I think he had a poem about that. The Ode of Remembrance. It's Remembrance Sunday in the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And there's Lest We Forget the Sculpture by a gentleman called Quilter, bronze sculpture. It's in Utah, so it's not that one that we're looking for. We'll go for this one. Lest we forget is a phrase commonly used in war remembrance services and commemorative occasions in English-speaking countries, usually those connected to the British Empire. It's originally a biblical expression. I didn't know that. But it was first used in the military context in 1897 Christian poem by Rudyard Kipling, who David James Flood says, wasn't he an MI6 agent too? I have no idea. You might be right. I didn't know. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised. Because, and the reason I say I wouldn't be surprised is because when you start researching, looking into these kind of things, you find out that the military and the entertainment industry and the arts are very, very closely intertwined. They're like Siamese siblings. It's hard to see where one starts and the other one stops, because that's how you win hearts and minds, isn't it? With music and poetry and plays. We know, for example, George Bernard Shaw, the very influential Fabian socialist. He was a playwright. And there's, of course, novelists such as Wells and many others. So there's always an overlap. And there's even a book called The Irregulars I've got over there. And that's that talks about how Roald Dahl was involved, and Ian Fleming as well were involved in the intelligence agencies going over to America to drum up some support and to try and help get the Americans into the wars that most Americans didn't want to be part of, very sensibly and rightfully so. So I wouldn't be surprised if Rudyard Kipling is MI6 agent. But back to the article. So it's a biblical expression, and it was first used by Rudyard Kipling in a Christian poem. Ooh, check that man out. Never seen a picture of Kipling before. What a tash. He was born in British India, which inspired much of his work. Okay. The phrase occurs 8 times in the poem and is repeated at the end of the first 4 stanzas. So there's a little bit here. God of our fathers, known of old, Lord of our far-flung battle line, beneath whose awful hand we hold dominion over palm and pine. Lord God of hosts, be with us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. And sorry, that had an exclamation point there. I should have put a bit more gusto into that. Lest we forget, lest we forget. But the way I just did it there doesn't quite sound sincere. But and now you know why I don't read poetry live on the internet. From the Bible, though, the concept of being careful not to forget was in Deuteronomy. Let's read that. For what nation is there so great who hath God so nigh unto them, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? And what nation is there so great that hath statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law, which I set before you this day? Only take heed to thyself and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life. But teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons. So I quite like this bit about forgetting the things your eyes have seen, because the times that we live in is where a lot of people ignore the things that their eyes see and instead choose to believe in the information that comes through their televisions from the experts, right? So ignore the spraying in the skies above your head and ignore the plummeting health and of all the people around you immediately after we roll out some experimental injections, and ignore all these other things and just get your information from the TV, get your authorized download from the TV or from the authorized speakers, of which there are many hundreds of thousands probably at this point. So yeah, you should rely more on your direct experience. Don't forget what you have experienced directly, because that is the most important source of information you have, is your first-hand life experience. The input that you get from living life, going out there and doing things and meeting people and trying to get things done and interact with reality, okay? That is real. What you get through your screens tends not to be real. It tends to be fake and curated and scripted and planned and put on like a show. Like a theater show or a pantomime or a puppet show. And I like this idea about teaching your sons and your sons' sons. You could probably get away with teaching your daughters as well, you know. Bible's a pretty old book. These days, it's good to teach the daughters things as well. It says, this biblical quote is probably a direct source for the poem and consistent with the main theme of the poem. And the phrase later passed into common usage after World War I across the British Commonwealth, especially becoming linked with Remembrance Day and Anzac Day observations. It became a plea not to forget past sacrifices and was often found as the only wording on war memorials or used as an epitaph. So that bit is the important bit there. It's really engraved into the hearts and minds of most of us, particularly here in England and the other former Commonwealth countries, or present Commonwealth, former British Empire territories, lest we forget. And you'll probably notice those eagle-eyed among you, you're probably sitting there going, yeah, but Nick, you didn't call tonight's stream lest we forget. You're right, I didn't. I called it Lest We Remember, because my idea is, from the elite's point of view, from the controller's point of view, the thing they do not want us to happen, they do not want to happen, is that we remember. Is that we, for example, dwell on what was done to us in 2020 and beyond, the years following, under the auspices of keeping us safe and healthy, right? We got to remember that when the next thing comes around and the government gives themselves extraordinary powers never to be rolled back, that are just temporary powers, and then they stay there forever. When the next emergency hits and we're all being browbeaten and intimidated and threatened and coerced to take a certain action that we would never take in any other circumstance, lest we remember. That's what I think they're worried about. They don't want us to remember certain things about history, certain things about the past. Alan Watts says all the time that people don't have a memory anymore. I'm just going to punt this live stream out to a few channels on Telegram. So that's why I came up with the title. Clever, isn't it? I changed one word in a very well-known, familiar phrase. I know, I'm not the most creative person on the planet. I'll admit that. That's why I read books, to get all my information and good ideas, rather than, writing novels and poetry and songs and all that other stuff. Although I have done a few songs. You can see them on my SoundCloud. Links for that is at allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews, which you can see scrolling underneath the bottom of the screen right as I say that. How about that? Perfect timing. And I know these graphics are a bit annoying for some people. I won't be using this for the whole stream, but it is just nice to tell people how to support and encourage people to support the show, because I would love to do this full time. I would love live streaming and reading books and helping people learn to be my full-time job. People tell me, though, well, if you give it out for free, people don't value it. And if they don't value it, they ain't going to pay for it. So what I should do is put it all behind a paywall. And that way, there might be something to that. There might be something to that. But I don't like to do that. I don't like to put barriers between my content and the people who want to enjoy it. So we'll get back to the show now. We are going to look at some books today, and we're going to have a good time doing that. Hang on a second, I need to go here. Okay, here we are. There we go. So yeah, it's allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews if you want to find out ways to support the channel. You can do so by making a donation or joining the socials, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, blah, 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 etc., etc., etc. Join the book club. That's the best thing to do. And I'm working on that, making it super duper fantastic so that when you look at it and you go, why am I not part of this? It's a no-brainer. That's what you got to do. You got to make a no-brainer. In marketing and sales, you have to make the thing you're offering look 9 to 10 times more valuable than the money you're asking for it in return. This is how you sell things. So I'm told. But the book in question is called Hidden History: The Secret Origins of the First World War by Jerry Doherty and Jim McGregor. And it's a fantastic book. I really, really, really recommend this. It blew my socks off when I first read it. And you can see on the side here, I put a lot of tabs in this one. And in fact, back in the day when I read this one, I was kind of new to reading these sorts of topics and quite enthusiastic. And I came up with this little color coding scheme. And so the green tabs are chapter summaries, and the orange tabs are anecdotes and hot takes. And the blue tab, there's only one, is notes and references. And the blue tab, I think, is at the top there, just to show you everything from that tab onwards is just appendices and references and index and all that kind of stuff. So a decent chunk of the book. It's always good. It's always good. And then you can see here, these are just anecdotes and hot takes and chapter summaries. So one of the best things about this book is, I'll show you the first one. So the end of every chapter, see if I can get a better angle on this. I'm kind of straining my neck a bit. I think I'm going to, hang on, apologies. So this is the first chapter. We'll read a little bit of this, but this first chapter is called The Secret Society. And at the very end of it, and every chapter, in fact, there's a summary. And the summary is a summary, chapter 1, The Secret Society. And then just bullet points, a bullet-pointed list of all the key things that are mentioned in the chapter. So you don't even have to read the book and the chapter. You can just buy the book and then just read the summaries at the end if you just want the data points, if you just want the key takeaways. But it's extremely well written, very easy to read. It's a bit of a page turner. And I would recommend people reading it in full if you have the appetite and the time. ESP, good evening, says, is Vannevar Bush in that? I don't know who Vannevar Bush is, but we can check. So, we're over at the index. We are looking for BU. We've got Bolsheviks. We've got the British Empire. And we got George E. Buckle, Bulgaria. We have no Bush. There is no Bush. Not only is there no Vannevar Bush, there aren't any Bushes in here, unless they just missed them out of the index when they made the index, which is possible. So I thought it'd be good to look at this kind of book and to do a little reading from it, perhaps, on the Day of Remembrance, because we want to remember how wars really start. Because, of course, there's the old adage that wars, history is written by the victors. And how do we know that the version of history that we get in our schools and our university courses and our documentaries and the History Channel and the BBC, how do we know they're telling the truth? What sources are they relying upon? Now, a lot of the times they'll bring in some experts and they'll sit some people down there and they'll tell you what it is, what it's all about and what causes it. But what are they referencing? What are their credentials? Who's paying them to do that? Who hired them? Who put this roster together of quote-unquote experts? So this is why it's better to go ourselves to documents and sources and books and do the reading and the research ourselves, right? I get that it's convenient to sit down and just watch an hour-long documentary, but it's no match to actually getting in there and doing some reading and research for yourself. So this is a really good book to at least get you started on that journey of doing that kind of reading and research. So let's have a little look. Let's go for... We don't need to read the acknowledgements. Let's have a do a chapter 1. It's short. No, it's not actually. Chapter 1 is it's quite long. We'll read the introduction. That's a better idea. We'll go through the introduction. Why not? Because the introduction to any book usually will give you a decent overview of what you're going to get in the rest of the book. In fact, reading the introduction in full is a good way to decide whether or not to bother reading the rest of the book. There's a good tip. If you've got a lot of books and you're not quite sure which ones to read in full, grab a book, read the intro, read the conclusion first. What? Read the conclusion first? Yes, read the intro and the conclusion first. And if you want to go on that journey, then read the rest of the book. But you might as well know where you're going before you start reading. I made this mistake. I just pick up a book, start at page 1 and just work my way through it. And then I'm a bit of a completionist as well, so I'll just keep going and keep going. Even if I think, well, I'm not enjoying this or I'm not getting much value from it. I have a bad habit of just wanting to get it done. So instead of falling into that trap, you can read the intro, read the conclusion, then decide, do I want to go where these people are trying to take me? But we'll have a look at the intro. We won't do the conclusion so much. The intro and a good intro and a good conclusion should usually cover the same sort of ground and tell you the same thing. It's that classic speaking method of tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you just told them, right? This is how you speak in a way that's engaging and captivating and that people can remember the message that you're trying to communicate to them. It's a pretty well-known public speaking method. But introduction. The history of the First World War is a deliberately concocted lie. Not the sacrifice, the heroism, the horrendous waste of life, or the misery that followed. No, these were very real. But the truth of how it all began and how it was unnecessarily and deliberately prolonged beyond 1915 has been successfully covered up for a century. A carefully falsified history was created to conceal the fact that Britain, not Germany, was responsible for the war. Had the truth become widely known after 1918, the consequences for the British establishment would have been cataclysmic. At the end of the war, Britain, France, and the United States laid the blame squarely on Germany and took steps to remove, conceal, or falsify documents and reports to justify such a verdict. In 1919, at Versailles, near Paris, the victors decreed that Germany was solely responsible for the global catastrophe. She had, they claimed, deliberately planned the war and rejected all of their proposals for conciliation and mediation. Germany protested vehemently that she was not responsible and that it had been, for her, a defensive war against the aggression of Russia and France. To the victors go the spoils, and their judgment was immediately reflected in the official accounts. What became the generally accepted history of the First World War revolved around German militarism, German expansionism, the Kaiser's bombastic nature and ambitions, and Germany's invasion of innocent, neutral Belgium. The system of secret alliances, a naval race, economic imperialism, and the theory of an inevitable war later softened the attack on Germany, though the spurious notion that she alone had wanted war remained understood in the background. In the 1920s, a number of highly regarded American and Canadian professors of history, including Sidney B. Fay, Harry Elmer Barnes, and John S. Hewitt, seriously questioned the Versailles verdict and the, quote, evidence on which the assumption of German war guilt was based. Their work in revising the official Versailles findings was attacked by historians who insisted that Germany was indeed responsible. Today, eminent British war historians place the blame on Germany, though most are willing to concede that, quote, other factors were also involved. Professor Neil Ferguson writes of the Kaiser's strategy of global war. Professor Hugh Strachan maintains that the war was about liberal countries struggling to defend their freedoms against German aggression, while Professor Norman Stone states that the greatest mistake of the 20th century was made when Germany built a navy to attack Britain. Professor David Stevenson quite unequivocally writes that, quote, it is ultimately in Berlin that we must seek the keys to the destruction of peace. It was Germany's fault. End of story. Several other recent accounts of the causes of the war offer alternative ideas. Christopher Clark's book, for example, looks on the events leading up to August 1914 as a tragedy into which an unsuspecting world sleepwalked. We reveal that far from sleepwalking into a global tragedy, the unsuspecting world was ambushed by a secret cabal of warmongers in London. In Hidden History, The Secret Origins of the First World War, we debunk the notion that Germany was to blame for this heinous crime against humanity, or that Belgium was an innocent, neutral nation caught unawares by German militarism. We clearly demonstrate that the German invasion of Belgium was not an act of thoughtless and indiscriminate aggression, but a reaction forced upon Germany when she faced imminent annihilation. From the day of its conception, the Schlieffen Plan was a defense strategy and the last desperate act open to Germany to protect herself from being overrun simultaneously from east and west by the huge Russian and French armies massing on her borders. What this book sets out to prove is that unscrupulous men whose roots and origins were in Britain sought a war to crush Germany and orchestrated events in order to bring this about. 1914 is generally considered as the starting point for the disaster that followed, but the crucial decisions that led to war had been taken many years before. A secret society of rich and powerful men was established in London in 1891 with the long-term aim of taking control of the entire world. These individuals, whom we call the secret elite, deliberately fomented the Boer War of 1899 to 1902 in order to grab the Transvaal's gold mines, and this became a template for their future actions. Their ambition overrode humanity, and the consequences of their actions have been minimized, ignored, or denied in official histories. Now, if you remember, just to dwell on that point for a second, at the diagram at the back that we were looking at earlier, you've got this little arm. Where is it? control of the historical record. There, right in the middle. Control of the historical record. So this is very key, and you know it's you can see it's linked to Oxford University, All Souls College, and Balliol College, and these two pop up all the time in my preamble rambles when I'm looking people up and finding material for the the introductions to my live streams. Oh, they went to All Souls College. Oh, they went to Balliol College. Over and over again. The Huxleys, for example, and it's also covered in my Continuity of Control email series. It pops up there. And it's mentioned quite a lot in the Quigley books. So you get in there and you create the academics who then go on to write the history books. Now, there was a little bit in the comments there about Neil Ferguson, who was mentioned up here, Professor Neil Ferguson. Yes, NPC historian, says David. Not only is he an NPC historian, he's also a biographer of the Rothschilds. He did a 2-volume biography on the Rothschilds, which is kind of pricey for a fairly mainstream, well-known book and writer such as Neil Ferguson. You know, a lot of his books are not that expensive at all. I've got War of the Worlds back there. You can get that for £1 or £2, but for some reason his Rothschild books are 40, 50, 60 pounds. So that's quite interesting. I'm not sure why that is, but the reason why this group has been minimized, ignored, or denied in official histories is because they control the writing of the histories. Because it's his story. It is written by the victors. And in this case, there's a very good, what's the word? Account of how that happened and paper trail to back it up. So, continuing. The horror of the British concentration camps in South Africa, where 20,000 children died, is conveniently glossed over. The devastating loss of a generation in a world war for which these men were deliberately responsible has been glorified by the lie that they died for freedom and civilization. This book focuses on how a cabal of international bankers, industrialists, and their political agents successfully used war to destroy the Boer republics and then Germany, and were never called to account. Carefully falsified history, a secret society taking control of the world, Britain responsible for the First World War, 20,000 children dying in British concentration camps, a cabal based in London whose prime objective was to destroy Germany. Lest any readers jump immediately to the conclusion that this book is some madcap conspiracy theory, they should, amongst other evidence, consider the work of Carroll Quigley, one of the 20th century's most highly respected historians. Professor Quigley's greatest contribution to our understanding of modern history was presented in his books The Anglo-American Establishment and Tragedy and Hope. The former was written in 1949, but only released after his death in 1981. Quite curious, isn't it? He wrote it in 1949, but it wasn't until 32 years later that it saw the light of day. His disclosures placed him in such potential danger from an establishment backlash that it was never published in his lifetime. In a 1974 radio broadcast, Quigley warned the interviewer, Rudy Maxa of the Washington Post, that, "You better be discreet. You have to protect my future as well as your own." The Anglo-American establishment contained explosive details of how a secret society of international bankers and other powerful unelected men controlled the levers of power and finance in Great Britain and the United States of America, and had done so throughout the 20th century. Quigley's evidence is considered highly credible. He moved in exalted circles, lectured at the top universities in the United States, including Harvard, Princeton, and Georgetown, and was a trusted advisor to the establishment as a consultant to the U.S. Department of Defense. He gained access to evidence from people directly involved with the secret cabal that no outsider had ever seen. Though some of the facts came to him from sources which he was not permitted to name, he presented only those where he was able to produce documentary evidence available to everyone. Wow. I didn't realize that. So he had a lot more to say, but because the evidence wasn't available to everyone, he didn't include it. Quigley noted a strong link between the highest echelons of power and influence in British government circles and Oxford University, particularly All Souls and Balliol colleges. He received a certain amount of assistance of a personal nature from individuals close to what he called the group. though, for obvious reasons, he could not reveal the names of such persons. Though sworn to secrecy, Quigley revealed in the radio interview that Professor Alfred Zimmern, the British historian and political scientist, had confirmed the names of the main protagonists within the group. Without a shadow of doubt, Zimmern himself was a close associate of those at the centre of real power in Britain. He knew most of the key figures personally and was a member of the secret society for 10 years before resigning in disgust in 1923. Quigley noted that the group appeared oblivious to the consequences of their actions and acted in ignorance of the point of view of others. He described their tendency to give power and influence to individuals chosen through friendship rather than merit, and maintained that they had brought many of the things he held dear close to disaster. The great enigma of Professor Quigley lies in his statement that while he abhorred the cabal's methods, he agreed with its goals and aims. Were these merely words of self-preservation? Be mindful of his warning to Rudy Maxa as late as 1974. Quigley clearly felt that these revelations placed him in danger. Through his investigations, we know that Cecil Rhodes, the South African diamond millionaire, formed the secret society in London during the last decade of the 19th century. Its aims included renewal of the bond between Great Britain and the United States, and the spread of all they considered to be good in English ruling class values and traditions. Their ultimate goal was to bring all habitable portions of the world under their influence and control. The individuals involved harboured a common fear, a deep and bitter fear, that unless something radical was done, their wealth, power, and influence would be eroded and overtaken by foreigners, foreign interests, foreign business, foreign customs, and foreign laws. They believed that white men of Anglo-Saxon descent rightly sat at the top of a racial hierarchy, a hierarchy built on predominance in trade, industry, and the exploitation of other races. To their minds, the choice was stark. Either take drastic steps to protect and further develop the British Empire, or accept that countries like Germany would reduce them to bit players on the world's stage. The members of this secret elite were only too well aware that Germany was rapidly beginning to overtake Britain in all areas of technology, science, industry, and commerce. They also considered Germany to be a cuckoo in the empire's African nest and were concerned about its growing influence in Turkey, the Balkans, and the Middle East. They set out to ditch the cuckoo. The secret elite were influenced by the philosophy of the 19th century Oxford professor John Ruskin, whose concept was built on his belief in the superiority and the authority of the English ruling classes acting in the best interests of their inferiors. And they professed that what they intended was for the good of mankind, for civilization, a civilization they would control, approve, manage, and make profitable. For that, they were prepared to do what was necessary. They would make war for civilization, slaughter millions in the name of civilization. Wrapped in the great banner of civilization, this became a secret society like no other before it. Not only did it have the backing of privilege and wealth, but it was also protected from criticism and hidden beneath a shroud of altruism. So altruism, that's your, what is it? That's your philanthropy. They would take over the world for its own good, save the world from itself. The secret society specifically infiltrated the two great organs of imperial government, the Foreign Office and the Colonial Office, and established their control over senior civil servants who dominated these domains. In addition, they took control of the departments and committees that would enable their ambitions, the War Office, the Committee of Imperial Defence, and the highest echelons of the armed services. Party political allegiance was not a given prerequisite. Loyalty to the cause most certainly was. Their tentacles spread out to Russia and France, the Balkans and South Africa, and their targets were agents in the highest offices of foreign governments who were bought and nurtured for future use. America offered a different challenge. Initially, the possibility of bringing the United States back into an expanded empire was discussed, but realistically, American economic growth and future potential soon rendered such an idea redundant. Instead, they expanded their power base to bring Anglophile Americans into the secret brotherhood, men who would go on to dominate the world through financial institutions and dependent governments. What's more, they had the power to control history, to turn history from enlightenment to deception. The secret elite dictated the writing and teaching of history from the ivory towers of academia down to the smallest of schools. They carefully controlled the publication of official government papers, the selection of documents for inclusion in the official version of the history of the First World War, and refused access to any evidence that might betray their covert existence. Incriminating documents were burned, removed from official records, shredded, falsified, or deliberately rewritten, so that what remained for genuine researchers and historians was carefully selected material. Carroll Quigley's histories have themselves been subject to suppression. Unknown persons removed Tragedy and Hope from the bookstore shelves in America, and it was withdrawn from sale without any justification soon after its release. The book's original plates were unaccountably destroyed by Quigley's publisher, the Macmillan Company, who for the next 6 years lied to him and deliberately misled him into believing that it would be reprinted. Why? What pressures obliged a major publishing house to take such extreme action? Quigley claimed that powerful people had suppressed the book because it exposed matters that they did not want known. To this day, researchers are denied access to certain First World War documents because the secret elite had too much to fear from the truth. As to those who have succeeded them, they ensure that we learn only those facts that support their version of history. It is worse than deception. They were determined to wipe out all traces that led back to them. They have taken every possible step to ensure that it would remain exceedingly difficult to unmask their crimes. We aim to do exactly that. Our analysis of the secret origins of the First World War uses Professor Quigley's academic research as one of the many foundation stones, but goes far deeper than his initial revelations. He stated that evidence about the Cabal is not hard to find if you know where to look. We have done that. Starting with the principal characters whom he identified and the insider Alfred Zimmern confirmed. This book traces their actions, interlinked careers, rise to power and influence, and finally exposes their complicity in ambushing the world into war. Quigley admitted that it was difficult to know who was active inside the group at any given time, and from our own research we have added to his lists those whose involvement and actions mark them out as linked members or associates. Secret societies work hard at maintaining their anonymity, but the evidence we have uncovered brings us to the considered conclusion that in the era that led into the First World War, the secret elite comprised a wider membership than Quigley originally identified. This book is not a fictional story conjured up on a whim. Despite the desperate attempt to remove every trace of secret elite complicity, the detailed evidence we present chapter by chapter reveals a tragic trail of misinformation, deceit, secret double dealings, and lies that left the world devastated and bankrupt. This is not conspiracy theory. This is conspiracy fact. A great many characters appear in the narrative of this history, and we have appended a list of key players for ready referral if required. The reader faces a tantalizingly difficult challenge. These immensely rich and powerful men acted behind the scenes, shielded by the innermost core of the establishment, by a controlled media, and by a carefully vetted history. The following chapters prove that the official versions of history as taught for more than a century are fatally flawed, soaked in lies and half-truths. Those lies have penetrated so deeply into the psyche that the reader's first reaction might be to discount evidence because it is not what they learned in school or university or challenges their every assumption. The secret elite and their agents will seek to control our understanding of what really happened and why. We ask only that you accept this challenge and examine the evidence we lay before you. Let your open-mindedness be the judge. And there you go. That's the introduction to Hidden History, The Secret Origins of the First World War, Jerry Doherty and Jim McGregor. What do you think about that? I'm going to have a look at the chat here recently, the recent chats here a little bit. David says, Volume 1 of, I think, the Rothschild biography by Neil Ferguson just glazes them and doesn't dish the dirt. Yeah, there's so many Rothschild books, even ones that they've written themselves or they've had written on their behalf. There's the book we read on the channel, the Romance of the Rothschilds, and a lot of it is like hagiography. A lot of it is bigging them up and talking about how genius they were and all the wonderful things they did and how fantastic and savvy and generous and kind and philanthropic and all this stuff. And it is harder to find critical material. But I did get a book through the post recently, which I'll just flash up now. I'm not going to read it today, but I did get this through. I found it on eBay. It's called The Rothschild Money Trust by George Armstrong. This is a reprint. It was a 1940 book, and this is a 1978 reprint. Not a lot of copies of this available, I can tell you that right now. Let's have a look at the contents. Yeah, so this is the kind of thing that'll get your YouTube channels banned permanently. So I won't read out some of this, but you can have a look at it while it's on the page. You got World War I in there, though, and World War II. Maybe we should have a little look at World War I and World War II, seeing as that's the theme of today's live stream. Federal Reserve's up there. Franklin Roosevelt's up there. So there you go. Probably quite a juicy one. That one, I think, is dishing the dirt, more so than the Neil Ferguson authorized biographies. But, we'll go back to hidden history for a second. I don't think that this book is the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I think it is a great example of an expose of secret societies and how they work. I think there's no one book that gives us the whole picture of everything and is the source of that reveals it all, the big picture. I think we have to pick up lots of different books, magazines, articles, blogs, documentaries, and we have to glean what we can and then find those jigsaw pieces and put them together for ourselves. I think it's very important that we think of it this way. So I'm sure there's stuff left out of this book or that they weren't aware of or aspects or angles that they weren't able to cover because no two-man team, or even if they have a team of researchers, is going to get everything on one fell swoop. And they have done 2 sequels to this book. One of them is Prolonging the Agony, which looks like this. Prolonging the Agony, how the Anglo-American establishment deliberately extended World War I by 3.5 years. Same pair. I haven't read this one yet. It's a really nice paperback. This was actually sent to me by the daughter of one of the authors. And there's your image again. It's really nice. And then they've just done a third one that was recently released, and I think it was mentioned further up in the chat. So let me scroll back a bit and have a look. Ashley Styles, good evening. I'll have a look at your comments in a moment. Let's have a look. Blake was here. He says, the one and only bold guy worth listening to on the entire internet. Can only be found right here. Give a thumbs up, everyone. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I'm sure somebody mentioned the book here. It's got Hitler in the title. 2 World Wars and Hitler. Who was responsible? It was David. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so that's the latest sort of follow-up. 2 World Wars and Hitler. Who was responsible? I haven't got a copy of that yet. There's too many books and not enough pounds in my bank account. Ashley says, good evening. GXO Solutions CEO Cameron Milner had stated the UN is irrelevant and calls for a one-world government. The article has been struck from the internet. He said it 2 weeks ago. His name is Milner. They just can't keep their hands to themselves, can they? Interesting. I haven't even heard of Cameron Milner, the CEO of GXO Solutions, but that is a nice, tantalizing thread to pull on and learn more. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. David says, the Anglo-American establishment wanted to take out all competition, the Austro-Hungarians, the Russians, and Germany. So this is the bit that I don't understand about that intro we just read, which is the part about the Anglo-Americans being, essentially being not racist, right? He was saying that all these other peoples were subordinate and not as good as the English, and the English were the best, and therefore the English should take over the world. But the thing is that the English and the Germans had way more in common and were way more similar than most of the people on the rest of the planet from all the other continents and countries with all the different languages and the variety of cultures out there. You would think that you can make an ally out of the Germans. If you wanted to take over the world and you were seeing your German cousins over there when their industry and the progress they were making and the innovation, etc., you'd be like, we need to make friends with them, and then we can go and do the Chinese and the Japanese and the African or whatever, right? That, to me, would make more sense as a strategy rather than we want to take over the world. Let's start with that group over there of people who are really similar to us and very innovative. And you know what I mean? Like it just seems a bit, and I'm only saying that to reflect on this idea of racism and being the motivation, right? If racism was the motivation, then surely you would make allies of the people who are very similar to you, and then go after the people who are very different to you. So I don't know. I'm not 100% sold on that. But yeah, thank you for that comment. Celine Lyon is asking about the accuracy of the number of likes on this video. I can't see any on my side, so. But we got people watching. That's all that matters, and we got people commenting, which is the main thing. Doris says, in fairness, one would expect that to be updated without a page read. Oh, you're still talking about the likes. Celine Lyon says, YouTube has some very quirky functionality and algorithms. Yes, that is true. I've been putting YouTube Shorts up recently, 1 or 2 a day. I've automated it, the posting. And some of them hit 700-800 views, and then others barely crack 100. And I don't know why. It's just, some of them get picked up and amplified and shared, I suppose, and then some of them just get forgotten and buried. So that's just the way it be. So that's why if you do like this, or if you like anybody online and you like the work they do, please support them. You know, it's not just me, but anybody. Put some likes, comments, shares, that kind of thing. It does help. And tell people about it. You know, that it does help. David James says, the Two World Wars and Hitler, Who Was Responsible book is 700 pages long and packed with footnotes. Yeah, I gotta get me a copy of that. And Celine Lyon says, not to mention that the British royalty are all German. Yeah, let me grab something. I've shown this on the stream before, but it's worth looking at. So this is a book called Lines of Succession. And it's all, I mean, you can get the idea what it is. It's just all family trees, right, of the royal family. So you got like Norway and how they sort of marry and what their shields and look like when you combine them all. I haven't spent much time in this book. It was just recommended to me, and I thought, oh, I'll grab it. Because it's a bit scholarly and boring, family trees and lineages and all that stuff. But yeah, if you have a look at the front cover there, it is Nicholas II of Russia and his first cousin, George V of England. And they're like twin brothers almost. So this is the thing, right? The royal families were literally related, and yet they didn't, and they couldn't get together to put their differences aside. There weren't really much in the way of differences to unite and help this take over the world type of effort. This seems a bit funny. I'm not sure I buy it, but I am not an expert on any of these things, so anything goes. Not anything goes, but just because I'm suspicious of something doesn't mean it's not true. But you gotta follow your intuition, like they say, and do research and take information in and try and put things together in a way that makes sense to you. Right? Trust yourself to do that. Because if you don't trust yourself to do that, then you're going to get handed experts like Neil Ferguson, who's going to give you a real bogus view on things and what happened, right? So let's dive into the book, and we'll just maybe grab a couple of quotes, and we'll just see what I marked up. It was literally years ago when I read this. Let's see. So as I'm going through this and I'm looking at I've put little tabs on these pages, but I haven't actually highlighted anything on the page. So past me has definitely done a boob here. So there's something juicy and good and worth mentioning on this page, but I didn't think it would be a good idea to tell me my future self what it was. So what we'll do instead is we'll go to the little summary notes at the end of the chapter, and we'll get a summary of chapter 1, right? Just to set the scene, give you a taste of what this book is like and what it's about and what it's covering. So chapter 1, The Secret Society. Here are the summary points. In 1891, a secret society comprising the members of the English ruling class was formed in London with the long-term goal of taking control of the world. This organization would have remained unknown had it not been for the research of the eminent American scholar, Carroll Quigley. He was given access to information that revealed the conspiracy and its impact on major events in the 20th century. Funded and founded by Cecil Rhodes, a select group of men were chosen for the inner circle, or elect, that would secretly control British colonial and foreign policy. Other associates were drawn in from time to time and may or may not have known what they were involved in. Wheels within wheels, right? You know only what you're supposed to know. Two essential components of their shared approach were secrecy and an understanding that the reality of power was much more important than the appearance of power. That's a rewording and paraphrasing of Quigley's words. I remember that quote. They built on the long-standing power and patronage that the Salisbury and Rosebery families exercised in British politics, but also included the Rothschild dynasty of international financiers who were very close to the British establishment. In the early years, the leading activists were Cecil Rhodes, William Stead, Lord Esher, Alfred Milner, and Lord Nathaniel Rothschild. Renewal and strengthening of the bond between Britain and the United States of America was a central plank of elite policy. By the mid-19th century, the House of Rothschild, based in London, Paris, Frankfurt, and Vienna, dominated European finance. Their holdings branched out across the world into new investments in steel, railways, and oil. Cecil Rhodes' diamond and gold companies were bankrolled by the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds preferred to operate behind other companies so that few realized exactly what and how much they controlled. Now, this looks to me a little bit more of a likely group to point the finger at, because who makes money from wars? Bankers. And if you've got this European banking dominance already established, then you won't mind playing one European group off against another European group and making them go to war, funding both sides and getting them both in debt, and then being the brokers of the financial situation after that war, right? So this narrative of, oh, it was a bunch of racist Brits, well, backed by this international financial cabal, I think is important to know. And then it's a question of who used who. And was it the predatory financiers going, hey, well, there's a little group of British racists over there. If we slip them a few quid and big them up and get some ideas in their head, tell them to take over the world, and they'll start fighting the other people and drumming up these wars and ka-ching, ka-ching. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that's something worth considering. But continuing. So this is still talking about Rothschilds. They targeted and financed relatively indebted royalty, including members of the British royal family. They purchased the Suez Canal shares for Disraeli and gave generously to politicians whom they supported. In Britain, their generosity and patronage broke down many of the anti-Semitic barriers they had to endure. Yes, so just bribing people not to be anti-Semitic. Everyone's got a price, right? Nathaniel Rothschild was intimately associated with Cecil Rhodes and his secret society from the outset. The powerful alliance of the money men and men behind the curtain and the emergence of Alfred Milner as leader gave the secret elite a cutting edge to make Rhodes' dream a reality. So there you are. That's the intro and chapter 1 summary. I highly recommend this book, and I really do think it is worth grabbing hold of a copy. We got Matrix Phone Booth in the chat. We got Robert Higgins as well. Good evening to you both. Matrix Phone Booth, everybody. My new favorite channel on YouTube. You got to go and check out Matrix Phone Booth. Yes. The answer to your question is yes. I've never shown them on the stream before. Should we do that in honor of Remembrance Day? Lest we remember. Let's have a look. What we got? Whoops. There goes my lighting. What is this better though? This might be better. This is a bit more moody, isn't it? With this mood lighting. What do you think? Should we keep the mood lighting? Hang on. Right, we got this one. So these ones I was really happy with. I had to get this from Japan. I had to get this ordered from Japan because I just found it. It was available in Japan. It was kind of affordable. Most of the time, this fella's books are not affordable, even though his children have set up a website now selling his books, and they're still not very affordable. And they've even given permission to some program to use some AI program to create audiobooks of them being read in his voice. And of course, it's not his voice. It's an AI reproduction of his voice, right? But yeah, you got Hitler's War, and it's actually 2 parts. It's like that's part 1, 39 to 42, and this is 42 to 45. So these are pretty good. These are quite rare and expensive. I'm really happy I managed to find affordable copies of these, chuck these in the old library. So I'm happy with those. And I've also got Churchill's War Volume 1, The Struggle for Power. And Churchill's War Volume 2, Triumph in Adversity. This little bit on the front, they've got over 1,000 pages. Books really don't, brag about the length of the pages these days, do they? So that's pretty cool. I like that. And I paid more. I'm pretty sure I paid more than 25 quid for this one, but I like how they put that. Over 1,000 pages of very, very tiny writing as well. And the other nice thing that this book has is one of these like little fabric bookmark tassel things. So it's a really nice volume. And this first one, David Irving, Churchill's War Volume 1, I got on the recommendation of Richard Grove from Grand Theft World, 1987. But again, I haven't been through them. I haven't read those yet. Just don't have time. So yes, I do have a few David Irving books. I've got one more. And this one's relevant. This is Nuremberg, The Last Battle. Unpublished diaries and papers of the principal actors. David Irving has pieced together the remarkable history of how the trial of the century came about. This was donated to the channel by a good friend. This is a reprint. This is 2024 reprint. It might mention in here his website where you can get these books. I think, there you go. I think it's irvinbooks.com. This one is, I might end up reading this one first before the Hitler and the Churchill ones, only because there's like a Nuremberg film coming out, which looks to be extremely high budget. It's got Russell Crowe in it. 2025, Nuremberg. Rami Malek is in there. If you don't know him, he's Freddie Mercury. Mr. Robot. Here it is. Nuremberg. 2 hours 28. Psychological thriller. A World War II psychiatrist evaluates Nazi leaders before the trials, growing increasingly obsessed with understanding evil as he forms a disturbing bond with Hermann Goering. Oh, look at fat Russell Crowe. So there you go. Nuremberg is coming out. I didn't know this film was out. I just saw a gigantic poster for it. Who else we got in here? Colin Hanks. Tom's little brother, I believe. Richard E. Grant. A lot of other people who I do not recognize. But Russell Crowe's playing Hermann Goering. So I have a feeling this is going to be a complete history written by the victors type of deal, right? Oh, I know that fella. He's from Mad Men. What's he called? There, John Slattery. He's in Mad Men. I do know him. So I'm never going to watch that film. I'll say it right now. But I might read David Irving's book about Nuremberg, which I think will give you a much more accurate picture of what happened. David Irving is also an extremely fantastic speaker, regardless of the controversies and whatever you think of his research and his books, and just listening to him speak, he's got a real, he's just a real like quintessential Brit. He's like entertaining, he's funny, he's quick, he's articulate. He seems to speak in these flawless, grammatically correct sentences. And he's an old school researcher because he went out to interview people. He is a fluent German speaker, and he traveled to the place to interview the survivors and the people who knew the people involved, and to access their diaries and the records and their personal collections of documents, right? And because he was bilingual, fluent in English and German, he could translate, and he didn't have to rely on other translators. He could do it himself. So he was in a really unique position to do some very rigorous and thorough, proper history. And he just documents what was there. He talks about what wasn't there, and that's what got him in a lot of shit. As Gary says, Irvin was taken to court. I don't know if he was proven wrong or discredited. I believe I watched a video of him talking about how he represented himself in court because he felt that he felt that a lawyer wouldn't be able to marshal the evidence and the ideas and the arguments that he'd put together in his books as well as he could. But of course, when you're in court, that's only one part of it, isn't it? You also need to know how to argue and put a case together and all this other stuff. So I don't know if he was proven wrong or not. I'm not sure what you would prove him wrong about, because as far as I know, his claims were just translation of documents, and these people never talked about this specific thing. That was the claim. And I don't know how, it's not an opinion, it's not an interpretation, as far as I'm aware, but I haven't read the stuff, so I don't know. Could be totally wrong. Celine Lyon says, this crown nonsense is so stupid. I totally agree. I have no idea how to turn it off. I'm sorry about that. General Meow Meow is here. What's up? Good evening. The lawyers against him also sent him nasty messages and quote-unquote gifts surrounding the death of a family member during the trial. Yeah, I remember him telling that story as well, yeah. Robert Higgins says, the truth movement needs to come together. We can all disagree on things, but we know the direction it's all going and how quickly too. Yeah, I agree. But how do you bring people together when they are infiltrated and it's divide and conquer through and through, right? All the groups are infiltrated. There's intelligence assets out there with huge followings, and they get training and scripts, and they get told what to say. And how do you compete? And who are you bringing together exactly? And it's an absolute minefield. And I agree. But I also wonder how and if it can be done. So let's carry on with tonight's show, because we're just on tangents now. Tangents are good though, but here is another book. I'm just going to fix my lighting. Excuse me a moment. So what my lighting is, when I moved, people probably know, but if you don't, I used to live in Southeast Asia. I lived in Vietnam for 4 years. And then when I left Vietnam, I was in a real mess. And I was very thin and not very healthy. And I was experiencing a lot of depression and anxiety. And it was not a good time for my mental health. And so I left Asia and I came back to England because I wanted to get a grip on myself, my moods, my energy levels, and all this sort of thing. Put some weight on and just to heal a bit. And when I was getting down, I was given a gift by a family member, and it was one of these, they're called SAD lamps, SAD, which stands for Seasonal Affective Disorder. And a SAD lamp here is what you can use in winter here in the UK when the days are about 6 hours of daylight, which is where we are now. It goes dark about 4 p.m. and then gets light about 9 a.m. And so I got this SAD lamp, and the idea is that it stimulates daylight and gets you feeling a bit happier. And that's what I'm using as the backlight over there now to illuminate the shelving with the books on. And it just fell off. It's propped up on my guitar stand. Real high-tech stuff. I'll show you. Let's see. How can we show you? I'll show you. It's real high-tech stuff. So you can see there, propped up on my guitar stand. That's it. That is the backlight to the Haze Reviews library. One day I will get some proper lighting and make this whole thing look good. But for now, I got to be careful not to move around too much because that thing will fall off again. Hal 1984 says the crown thing can be turned off. Are you sure? I didn't know that. I thought I'd looked for it. I thought I'd looked for the settings on how to turn it off. I obviously didn't look hard enough. So, settings, privacy, live chat, appear. Great. Let's do that right now. Settings, privacy, live chat, appear. So, there's two little buttons under that live chat bit, and both of them are toggled off. Oh, I see. So you all have to go and pick right, not me. This is what you all have to do. You all have to go to settings, privacy, and then, right, got it. Okay, I'll put this up for everybody's benefit because it's annoying. But it's not going to stop it happening. It'll just be tagged to somebody else who hasn't done this. Yeah, so you go, you come up here to your little thing, and then you got settings, and then you go to privacy, and then it's there. Live chat, appear on leaderboards. You may be ranked in the leaderboards as a viewer and earn experience for your engagement. If you turn this off, you'll be removed from the top fans leaderboards, and your previous participation will be removed. So you can turn it off so that they won't appear, that little crown thing won't appear next to your name. But I can't turn it off and just remove it altogether from the chat on my live stream, I don't think. If I'm wrong about that, please let me know. Hal 1984 is the guy to go to with your IT questions, ladies and gentlemen. So if anyone can figure it out and get to the bottom of it, it's him. So the other book I wanted to talk about tonight, Lord Milner's Second War. Okay. I just saw your message, Hal. Thank you. If you can help me do that, that would be great. We will all appreciate it because it is annoying. Crown thing. It's ridiculous. We don't need to gamify this live stream. That's not what we're here for. That's not what it's about. So this is Lord Milner's Second War, and it's a bit shiny. There's a lot of glare. It says the Lord Milner Secret Society, the origins of World War I and the start of the New World Order. This book is called Lord Milner's Second War because if you remember the intro to Hidden History, they talked about the Boer War, and that is Milner's first war. So Lord Milner's first war is the Boer War in South Africa, and then his second war is World War I. It's kind of it's a confusing title because you think of World War I and World War II, and World War II was the Second World War, and then you've got the Lord Milner's Second War, but it's about World War I. But, you know, so John Cafferty loses points for the title of the book, but he more than makes up for it in the actual book itself, which is another like fantastic, easy read, and it's a bit of a page turner too. We got Secret Society of Cecil Rhodes, so it covers a lot of the same ground as Hidden History, but just backs it up with more of a focus on Milner. And the diplomacy that went on, and the handshakes and the intrigues and the promises, and I actually have some highlights in this book. Cool. So this book I read shortly after reading Hidden History, and I did something a bit smarter in this book. So at the start of every chapter, I put in these little note cards and made some points that stood out to me about the chapter so that I could go back and more easily recall and remember stuff. I think I didn't do it again for other books, but this is a really good idea, right? Get a little note card, write some bullet points on it as you go through the chapter, and then stick it at the beginning of the chapter. And then when you want to review or remind yourself, instead of going through the whole chapter and looking at your note, you can just grab that little reminder card. So I've written on this one, Introduction. Incoherence proves conspiracy. So what he says in this book is when you go through the official records and you find out that none of it makes any darn sense, that's a sign that there's a conspiracy afoot. And this happens a lot with the official accounts of various events. I'm sure it's going to happen when the dust settles and COVID-19 is etched into the annals of history, that the official story is not going to make any sense. Just like the official story of the Lusitania doesn't make any sense, and that prompted Colin Simpson to write his book about it and pick it apart and analyze it. Just like the official story of, let's think of another example, the Manchester bombing. That's another one, recent one. Rich D. Hall, Ian Davies, and David Hughes, PhD, I think he's a PhD, have all done a lot of work picking apart that narrative and story and that evidence. So there's contemporary examples and there's historical examples. So that's the point there. If you see incoherence in a story, there's a good chance that there's some conspiracy afoot because they're trying to rewrite the record and they're trying to lie, basically. And the whole point of them is to stop us remembering what the truth is. And lest we remember, we might actually have a chance at throwing off this dominant minority and getting these parasites off our necks. But if we keep forgetting, it'll never happen. So another point I put down here is Anglo-American scholars do not question Sir Edward Grey and have rewritten the historical record. Sir Edward Grey. Yeah, so he's an interesting character. But he doesn't seem to come under a lot of scrutiny when the Anglo-American scholars, many of them are probably Rhodes scholars, for example, they don't talk about him, focus on him, or question the role that he played. He says here that the Rhodes Milner Group founded Chatham House, which is the Royal Institute for International Affairs. It became the Anglo-American establishment, which became the Bilderberg Group. So he sets out this lineage, this rebranding through time, which linked Chatham House, the CFR, the Federal Reserve, and the British Foreign Office. So that's the introduction. Let's see if we've got some quotes here. Probably do. So this was back when I was using highlighters in my books. What I noticed is the ink from the highlighter bleeds through and messes up the other pages on some books. So I stopped using highlighters and now I go for pencil because you can rub that out and change it if you want to. Let's have a look at a bit further into the book. Let's see. Let's find another chapter. So the first is Secret Society of Cecil Rhodes, covering a lot of the similar stuff that we got in Hidden History. Talking about John Ruskin again. House of Rothschild. Rhodes and Rothschild became and remained staunch allies. When it came to finance, Alfred Beit exercised the dominant role. When it came to politics, Rhodes asserted the leading role. So it's hand in glove, the finance and the politics, really. And then this whole page is the Confession of Faith by Cecil Rhodes. So it's a verbatim quote of what he wrote in his will. So he wrote, "I contend that we are the finest race in the world, and that the more of the world we inhabit, the better it is for the human race." So there is a bit of that racism there. In the present day, I become a member of the Masonic order. I see the wealth and power they possess, the influence they hold, and I think over their ceremonies, and I wonder that a large body of men can devote themselves to what at times appear the most ridiculous and absurd rites without an object and without an end. The idea gleaming and dancing before one's eyes like a will-o'-the-wisp at last frames itself into a plan. Why should we not form a secret society with but one object, the furtherance of the British Empire and the bringing of the whole uncivilized world under British rule, for the recovery of the United States, for the making the Anglo-Saxon race but one empire? So that bit there, right? Making the Anglo-Saxon race but one empire. That would mean that you want to make Germany your allies, wouldn't it? I think. Yeah, so interesting stuff. So there's a bit here about chartered companies. Let's go on to the next tab, see what I got. So this is still the same chapter. It's quite a long chapter, this Secret Society of Cecil Rhodes. So there's a bit here about the role of the Times. Note that as early as 1895, the Times newspaper gave unwavering support to Rhodes and Jameson, foreshadowing the close cooperation between the paper and the Milner Group leading up to the Great War. Quigley identifies the Times as one of the fiefdoms of the Milner Group. Yeah, so the Jameson raid was a conspiracy and a bit of a cock-up as well. And that was a key event, setting the stage for what came. And you got your footnotes after the chapter, which is always good. So there's John Flint's book on Cecil Rhodes, which I think I have a little copy of here. Yeah. See, I get a book like this, and then I end up buying like 10 more books because of all the bibliography. But this is Cecil Rhodes by John Flint. Nice little first edition from 1974. He was the son of a vicar, apparently. And then, yeah, Conspiracy and Catastrophe, the Jameson Raid. That's chapter 8 in this one. And then the illustrations, you got Cecil Rhodes at Oxford. Should we have a look at that? Let's find the picture of Cecil Rhodes at Oxford. Because I was saying on my test stream on Thursday night that people forget, but a lot of books have photographs and old pictures. So you're not just preserving the words and the story or the arguments or the evidence or the narrative or whatever. You're also preserving like pictures and that's another reason to get the hardback books, or the hard copy, I should say. So here he is, 24 years old, at Oriel College, Oxford. And there's a picture down here of King Lobengula and his favorite wife. He does look pretty happy with himself there. I don't know what role King Lobengula has in Cecil Rhodes' life, but I'm sure it's covered in this book somewhere. And these are men of the British South Africa Company. And this is Cecil Rhodes with his cabinet. And we all know that Klaus Schwab likes to penetrate the cabinet. And there's Cecil Rhodes just lounging at a picnic. Look at him. All right, poser. And there's a sketch of Rhodes. This is during the siege of Kimberley. Rhodes watches the firing of Long Cecil, the gun made by De Beers engineers. So he got a big gun named after him. Rhodes and General Kitchener proceeding to receive honorary degrees at Oxford, because we know a lot of the time these characters just get given degrees and titles and awards and letters after their names and all this sort of stuff, right? That pops up all the time in my preamble rambles. It's always a kind of pattern that we see. Honorary degrees and so I think that's all the pictures that we got for this book. But this one was very affordable, not at all artificially overpriced or anything, because it's an approved history, really. So I don't think it's going to give you the juice. But there you go. That's what happens to me when I buy a book. It's like what do they call it? Like domino foods. A domino food is when you start eating it, you can't stop. That's what I was like with books. I bought Hidden History and this. And that led to another 20 books I had to buy, and each one of those books led to another bunch of books. So it just goes on like that. But there's the Jameson Raid, the Fall of Kruger's Republic, Cecil Rhodes, The Anatomy of an Empire. So pretty well documented and backed up with references and other books. So this is chapter 2. It's called Milner's First War. And here's my little note card that I put in this book. I'd totally forgotten that I put these note cards in the book, but now I'm really glad I did. It's a good thing to discover on a live stream that you made the live stream much easier for yourself by a bit of planning. So there's your top tip from today's live stream. Do this as you're reading books. So Milner's First War, as I said, is the Boer War. There's a little bit here about how Milner shared Rhodes's belief in social Darwinism. So this is why Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution, preservation of the favored races, subtitle of his book On the Origin of Species, is so important to know about and be aware of, because it's used and pushed onto people to justify, like, we're the Brits, we're the most important race in the world, why shouldn't we control all these uncivilized, backwards people? And we'll start by waging war on our cousins. But Milner's First War, let's see my notes. So I put unknown origin of Milner's 500 a year. Probably bankers. Oh, so it must say in here somewhere that he was getting £500 a year and they didn't know where it was coming from. Oh, yeah, it's down here, look. So this is Milner's biographer, Marlowe. Struggles to understand how Milner could have arrived at an independent position, stating, Milner was to repeat this statement about an independent position in a letter to the Chancellor of the Exchequer in 1897. I have been unable to discover from where the money required for this independent position was derived. So Milner was being funded, and we don't know by who. Who could it be? Who has deep pockets and lots of money? Most of whatever money his mother left him was apparently lost by Mr. Malcolm. He was certainly hard up when at Oxford, where he had to rely on his scholarships and some tutoring jobs, and later on his New College Fellowship worth £200 a year, which incidentally he put at the disposal of the warden and fellows on his appointment to Somerset House. But I have discovered nothing to explain his, quote, independent position, which probably at that time denoted an income of at least £500 a year. And I read this in 2022. As you can see in my note, and I translated £500 a year into 2022 money was £75,933 a year. So somebody was giving Milner nearly £80,000 a year, and we don't know who or where it was coming from. And this was when he was a bachelor in 1893. So, curiouser and curiouser. Let's see what else we got on this little note card. Milner's group fomenting conflict with Kruger, who was president of the Transvaal, with the aim to consolidate control of the region. Transvaal contained huge gold and diamond deposits. Now of course, we know, or we probably, most of us should know, that Cecil Rhodes was into gold and diamonds and South Africa in general and Africa are of interest to the colonialists for that reason. They've got these diamonds and gold reserves, and the people who lived there weren't doing anything with them, and they're just stupid and backward and uncivilized. And so we have to go over there and spread a bit of civilization and dig up the gold and the diamonds and make huge, ridiculous profits out of that. And, you know, in order to do that, you got to wage a little bit of war. You got to get your hands dirty. You know, you got to make them an offer they can't refuse. Before we go on to that bit, though, and look up for the quote, I just found this bit, which looks interesting. I wrote in the margin, two-party illusion. So Milner, it says here. So let's go back a little bit. Quigley stresses that Milner was an international financier. We know that J.P. Morgan asked him to manage Morgan Grenfell in 1899. Because of his South African commitments, Milner arranged for his close friend Clinton Dawkins to take the position. Ironically, Dawkins' decision to accept the position with J.P. Morgan caused a stir in England because it suggested to some that Morgan's money had corrupted a promising imperial administrator. No record survives of how Milner or Dawkins came to be on Morgan's list of trusted Englishmen. We know that both Clinton and Milner served as private secretaries to Sir George Goschen, and we know that Milner had close ties to Lord Rothschild. But we know little else. Our ignorance haunts us because of what Milner, who started life poor, wrote in 1893. If I were ever to return to active politics, it will be a very long way ahead, and I am inclined to think I never shall return. I feel that a man can do any amount of good work and be of the greatest service without joining the fray. Can in fact be of greater service because he keeps himself in the background. I have an independent position, and we have no idea where his independent position came from or how he got it, but I have an independent position, a great number of friends, and, I fancy, that sort of influence which disinterestedness always gives. On the other hand, I am no partisan. My interests do not run on the lines of party, and if I can help, in however small a way, to carry out the objects I have at heart, I do not care two straws how the politicians are labelled who execute them. Ha, there you go. So, Milner, a international financier, grew up poor. He was getting 80 grand a year, 76 grand a year in late 18th century money. 19th century money. And no idea where it came from. He doesn't care how the politicians are labeled who execute the objects he has at heart. That is quite an insight into this level above and outside the politics, right? So when you think the politicians, the puppeticians are under control and your vote and they represent you and blah, 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 all that stuff. People like Milner back in the late 19th century, the 1800s, the late 1800s, has objects in his heart, or objects, in heart. That means goals. That means desires, things he wants to achieve. And he doesn't care how the politicians are labeled who executes them. His goals, his desires are above and outside and beyond the realm of the two-party politics, the fray, as he calls it, joining the fray. So, yet, for the rest of us, the commoners, the Joe and Jane average in the streets, we get given this two-party system, and this is the best and the brightest of among us, and you can serve your country by, petitioning your local MP, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, this elite, above and outside and beyond that whole system, just admitting that they are, basically. So that's a pretty good quote. I like that one. I'm glad that past me in 2022, 3 years ago, decided to highlight that. All right, what else we got? So nothing else from this chapter. We'll go back to the card. I also wrote down Milner's allies included the Queen and Rothschilds, Asquiths, Selborns, etc. Milner believes in social. There is allies. So Milner's allies include the Queen, and I think that is not the band. They weren't around at this time. He's not talking about Freddie Mercury. Milner's allies included Queen, Rothschilds, Asquiths, and Selborns. Big, influential, powerful families. Jewish money, Rothschilds, of course. Well, they call themselves Jews. I don't know if they are or not. And Milner believes in social Darwinism. So that was the key takeaway from Milner's First War. Chapter 2. Let's have a little look at the bibliography. I do like it when the bibliography is at the end of the footnotes are at the end of a chapter as well. So we got 83 footnotes for this chapter. Pretty well referenced. Thomas Pakenham, The Boer War. I do have a copy of that. Pick that up in a second-hand shop for a couple of quid. Proconsul in Politics, a study of Lord Milner in opposition and in power. I do have that, and I'm going to get it and show you it because it's like a rare picture of Milner as an old man. You got to look at him when he was old. Look at that fella. I mean, he just looks like a piece of work right there, doesn't he? Let's see. I'm a little delivery receipt here. Doesn't say how much I paid though. I like to keep them in there just to remind myself how much I paid. So there he is. Little, just came from nothing, was born poor, just pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Milner. So proconsul in politics. Let's have a look. Let's see if we can contrast that with a young picture of him. It's obviously stressful being a member of the inner circle of the Milner Group and the secret society because he lost all his hair. Let's see what else we got here. So there's Asquith, one of his allies, H.H. Asquith. The Milnerites called him Squiff. It's an endearing nickname, Squiff. This is L.S. Amory. Is that Leopold Amory? What other pictures we got in here? Not too much else, actually. But there you go. There's Proconsul in Politics by A.M. Gollin. He just looks like he's been up to no good his whole life. The transformation's a little bit like Tony Blair, and they just get because they're up to no good. They just get more evil and demonic looking as they get older. What else we got? Milner, Apostle of Empire is another book. Anglo-American Establishment, Quigley. The Fall of Kruger's Republic. Yeah. The Origins of the South African War, Joseph Chamberlain and the Diplomacy of Imperialism. That might be a good one as well. Forgotten Patriot, A Life of Alfred Viscount Milner of St. James and Cape Town, Proconsul in, I just mentioned that one. The Milner Papers, South Africa, 1897 to 1899. So, pretty academic, pretty well referenced and researched, and you can see that there's a lot of reading that's gone in to this little, fairly humble paperback. It's 300 pages, but it's absolutely packed. And they've even crammed a little index at the end. And I don't know if this fellow's done any of the books. Looks like he might have done, actually. Trinity College Dublin graduate, John Kafurki. So that's another one you might look into. Lord Milner's second war. So not only did he manufacture, not one war wasn't enough for this guy. He had to get two going. That's the kind of character he was. But on this Remembrance Day, another good book to be aware of, to look into, to grab a copy. And just remember that wars don't happen by accident. They are manufactured, they're planned. It takes a lot. When you go through hidden history, and this book as well, you realize that it took a long time, a lot of patience, a lot of diligent planning. You have to get the right men in the right positions so that you have the right levers to pull, and you could exert influence from the right angles on the population. It takes a lot of work. It doesn't spontaneously just erupt because one guy got shot, right? Which is the story. Like, one guy got shot and that kicked off this. No, there's way more to it. And these kind of books reveal that. And then they put Remembrance Day in a new light. And they put all this glorification, all these military films and these war films where the soldiers survive by the skin of their teeth and they're heroic, and it puts all that in a new frame, because these fellas who were organizing and sorting this war out, they were never at any risk at any point during the whole thing, but they would happily, gladly send hundreds of thousands of young boys to their deaths if it served the object they have in their heart, right? Just sick, disgusting, and despicable. And it's the kind of thing I wish more people were aware of and talked about and discussed on these kinds of events. How are we doing in the chat? David says, I have around 1,000 books and counting. Good man. Get on. Get in there. Yeah. I haven't counted, or I need to do a little guesstimation. I'm probably not far off 1,000. Apparently, when you hit 1,000, you get to call it a library. But and it's not a library until you hit 1,000. So 1,000 books to call it a library. There you go. General Meow Meow says, conspiracies wouldn't exist if things made sense in the world. I like that. The conspiracy theories wouldn't exist if governments didn't keep secrets and classify all their documents for 50 or 100 years. And redact all the information that they release and do such a fantastic job of releasing narratives around events that never make any damn sense. And so we have to theorize and guess and try and figure out what they're coming up with. That's another prime cause of conspiracy theories, which is what we're trying to avoid on this channel. We don't want to theorize too much. We're looking at what people have written down in their books. Gary says, I like that Edward Griffin puts a summary for each chapter in Creature from Jekyll Island. Sweet. Yes, it's a great thing. All authors should do it. Footnotes on the page at the bottom of the text, so you don't have to skip to the back all the time. And chapter summaries at the end of the chapter. Every book should have that as standard. What's funny about their supposed racism is they appear contrary to it. They've established institutions that are destroying these very ideas. General Meow Meow. Yeah, that's another thing, actually. When talking about this kind of stuff and thinking about the continuity of Cecil Rhodes, the Round Table groups, Royal Institute for International Affairs, Council on Foreign Relations, the think tanks leading up to Trilateral Commission up to the present day, is that this attempt to take over the world is clearly not racial anymore. They'll play races off against each other. They will, we all surely at this point can see that. It should be affecting most people in the Euro North America countries at this point. But they'll play groups off against each other all day long. I think that's the divide and conquer. That is the Masonic checkerboard. Black team against the white team, red team against the blue team, old against young. Just every avenue of division that can possibly be leveraged, they will do that. They will pour. They'll put a lever in there and crank it to try and widen that gap between people. So it's hard to think of it now as racial, because it doesn't seem to me that any one race is really getting ahead by this thing that's getting rolled out. It seems like it's probably a group made up of all races and all creeds and all nationalities. It's just whoever's at the very top of all these groups and institutions. That's how it looks to me. That's kind of what Mark Passio teaches on What on Earth is Happening. He calls them Satanists, and he says they're from all different religions. They're corporate execs. They are religious people. They are different nationalities. Satanists can be found in all walks of life, all over the country, all over the world, in every country, and at the very top of every group that you can think of, whether it's a corporation or a nation or a religion, then these people at the very top are all working together. That model sort of makes more sense to me. My intuition tells me that that's a little more accurate, rather than it's the British. It's the British elite, or it's the banking elite, or it's the ... fill in the group. Now, of course, they all kind of work together, and they all seem to be cooperating, and they all seem to be complementing each other. The banking, but none of it could happen without money. So, there's that as well. So I don't know. I got to do more research. I got to read more books before I can come to an informed conclusion about it. Gary says he was given investment capital to set up the De Beers Diamond Company. I think that was Rhodes, wasn't it? General Meow Meow. Rhodes buying up the pumps and then buying up the diamond mines that couldn't clear out the flooded mines. Milner had no problem with the bloody bits when stealing land with soldiers' lives. Yeah, well said. Looks like a cutthroat scoundrel, says Gary. Right on. Exactly. So General Meow says the practice of picking psychopaths for special projects goes back a long way. Yeah, that's it. It's like it's grooming and creating and meeting, identifying these psychopathic traits, and then grooming them and recruiting them and buttering them up and bringing them into the fold, and then getting them in the position of power, knowing that they will be totally brutal and ruthless, and because you yourself are a psychopath, you know how the other psychopaths work, and because you are a psychopath and you're surrounding yourself with other psychopaths, you have to always be constantly vigilant and on guard for getting screwed over or messed with or betrayed by the other psychopaths. So only the very most psychopathic, manipulative people get anywhere near these higher levels of influence and power and wealth and control. You got to be and they're intelligent as well. They're not stupid. They're not like careless. They are aware of how complex things are and how long you need to plan and patient you need to be, and how many different masks you might have to wear and relationships you might have to fake your way through. It's something that I think the average person struggles to wrap their head around, because the average person isn't like that. The average person's pretty simple. I got my friends, I got my family, I got my job, I got my hobbies, I got my house. I go on holiday every now and again. I'm happy with that. Thank you very much. The psychopaths aren't happy with that. They want more. They want more control. They want more power. They want to see their own ability to control people and influence people increase and expand. And I think there's no limit to that power and control that they thirst for, which is why we're seeing the rollout of these crazy, intense systems of surveillance and control, because there's no capacity, no limit, no roof, no ceiling to what they want to control, down to the cells in your body, down to the thought pattern in your mind, your actions, your behaviors, your speech, all of that. Like they want it all. It's quite alarming. Celine Lyon says, Trojan horse philanthropy, the new name for the mafia. Same planning with the scamdemic. They practiced with AIDS using the same fake PCR technology, poisoning gay men with AZT and a failed and lethal cancer treatment. Yeah. General Meow Meow says, agreed. You'd think spreading democracy wouldn't require decades-long secrets. Yeah. That's all it's all about. It's just about spreading democracy and peace and freedom. So there you are. That's book number 2 that I wanted to talk to you about today. What else we got? Well, we have got, of course, the classic, the book which inspired the other 2 that we've already looked at, which is Carroll Quigley's Anglo-American Establishment. Now, I didn't realize he'd written it that long ago. So he wrote it in the, 40s, 49, did he say? And then published in the 80s. So it was sitting there unseen and unread for many decades, which is kind of sad. But what would have changed if he'd have got it out sooner? These things are, the release of information is tightly controlled, and it's really no accident that we get things when we get them, because you need certain parts of the plan to have gotten so far until you release the information, right? Boris says, was my comment deleted? What did it say? And if it was, it wasn't deleted by me. YouTube does sometimes delete things. I haven't seen you comment for quite a while, though. If I go back through the chat, I don't think I've seen you comment at all. No, I can't see your comment. I didn't delete it, though, but YouTube might have deleted it. What did you say? What did you talk about? Tell us again and see if it gets deleted this time. So the Anglo-American Establishment, Carroll Quigley. Something I'll mention, because I mentioned this to someone who didn't know it recently. You can see here you got the British flag, the Union Jack, and then in the middle is the American flag, and it's upside down. And the reason it's upside down is because an upside down flag signals a country in distress. Now, there's a thing going on in the UK recently where a lot of people have been putting up Union Jacks and also putting up St. George crosses. And this is kind of partly to do with the, just raise my desk a bit, partly to do with the influx of immigrants and the way that migrants have been put up in hotels and being given taxpayer money, really. So they're being incentivized to come here because once they get here, they're looked after and they're helped and they're taken care of. And the question is, like, why are they coming in here in such huge numbers? Why is it costing us money? Why are foreigners able to come into the country and just get money out of a system they've never paid into and might never pay anything into, right? So what people have been doing is they've been putting flags up, and they've been putting them up in town centers and on lampposts and flying them at their homes and all this sort of thing. Now, one of the really interesting things that's amazing to me is how the Union Jack and the St. George's Cross has been kind of tainted in a lot of people's minds, particularly left-leaning people who have been downloaded with this idea that you're racist and you're a right-wing extremist if you want to fly the flag of the country you were born into, and that you're presumably your parents and grandparents lived in, and it's your nationality, it's your ethnic identity, and if you want to celebrate that by flying the flag of that place, then you're a racist, hateful, extremist, bigoted, xenophobic right-winger. And a lot of people actually believe this. And it's amazing how it's been done, because in other countries, and I always use the example of Vietnam, if you see groups of school children or colleagues going out on a team building day, they'll all wear the Vietnamese flag in a t-shirt, which is just red with a yellow star. And they'll all wear it, and it's not a problem. And it's thought of, it's a good thing to be proud of that symbol of your nation, your culture, your heritage, and your traditions. Now, we've been conditioned otherwise. But then at the same time, you'll also see a lot of, for example, Palestinian flags being raised. And we went past, I was out in the car today, we drove past a group of Palestinian activists. I don't know what you call them, protesters, although I don't know who they were protesting on a street in Manchester. And they all had masks on, which was weird. And they had the Palestine flags there. And so the same people who'll tell you that that raising the St. George's Cross or the Union Jack is a racist, right-wing thing to do will stand there and raise a Palestine flag. You know, a country they've probably never been to, probably don't know anybody who lives there, and it's horrible what's going on there. It's tragic, it's disgusting, and it's despicable. But people will they'll be brought to this point of caring more about what's going on in other countries and flying the flags of those other countries more than what's going on in their own country and flying the flag of their own country. And this happened with Ukraine when that whole thing kicked off. They were projecting the blue and yellow colors onto cathedrals, and that everything got saturated in these blue and yellow colors suddenly. They do the same thing with Pride. You know, they'll put that flag all over the place. So it's like certain flags, being proud of certain flags is a good thing, but being proud of other flags is a horrible right-wing, nasty, racist thing. It's absolutely bonkers. None of it makes any sense. But the reason I mention that is because I was in my hometown fairly recently and talking to someone who was saying like, oh yeah, you know, look, they put all these flags up. I knew they wouldn't let us down in this place, meaning what a bunch of racist right-wingers putting their flags up. And then they said, they haven't even put them on right. They've put them on upside down. Idiots. And I said, well, the reason they've put them on upside down is because they're saying it's a country in distress. We are a country in distress. That's what they're saying by putting the flag upside down. So I'm just mentioning that in case people don't know it. I thought it might, I don't know, I thought it was common knowledge, but it might not be. And it's never good to assume people know certain things. It's always worth mentioning because there might just be one person out there who goes, oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. Thanks for letting me know. So now you know. If you've seen, because some of these flags, they're the St. George Cross, and they have the word England written on them, and then they've been put on the lamppost upside down. So that's not an idiot. Most people can at least see which way up writing goes. You know, that's someone who's putting the flag upside down on purpose. Country in distress. Because what they perceive going on here, they think we're in distress and they want to send that message. So there you go. We've got a few comments off the back of that. And Boris is saying, underpaid YouTube mods added again. Nope, my comment was deleted again. I rest my case. Try writing in code, put numbers instead of letters and spaces in some of the words that might be triggering the censorship. You know, you got to think a bit outside the box sometimes to get the message through. You can try that. Please do try that actually, because I want to know what you're writing that's getting deleted. Hasdak says, my flag's up all the time. Good on you. Robert Higgins says, YouTube puts a timer or time out at times also on evils. Sorry, lives. I'm not sure what that means. Hal 1984. I think the demise of patriotism in the UK was started in the 80s with football hooliganism, perhaps with a purpose. Nice. Yeah, I think there's something to be said about that. Yeah, I do. It's definitely deliberate, you know. And actually, I've got a... Shall I read you that bit? Shall we just go to that? Okay. Put a pin in Anglo-American establishment, Carol Quigley, for a second. There's another book I've been reading. This is The Blackening of Europe, Volume 3, Critical Views. And there is some fantastic stuff in the very early part of this book, in the introduction and the earlier sections. Let me see if I can find the bit that I was just thinking of. So... And what the bit that I'm thinking of is that hypocrisy, and she did a really fantastic job of just summarizing that hypocrisy that I was trying to articulate there. But you know, this person has a PhD and words things much better than I probably ever could. Although I shouldn't sell myself short, you know. Maybe I could write a good book if I put my mind to it. Let me see. So it's a really good book because what she does is she does this survey of right-wing voices, and she notices a pattern. She spots a pattern, and she has very artfully described the pattern that she's seen. Okay, I think it's this bit on Melanie Phillips. So I hadn't heard of Melanie Phillips before, but apparently she's written a book called Londonistan. I keep doing that. Londonistan. Yeah, 2006 book, Londonistan. And she's also done a book called The World Turned Upside Down, The Global Battle Over God, Truth and Power, 2010. And this is in like this section is a summary of Melanie Phillips' arguments before the critique which follows them. But I think it's a pretty good summary. So, in her work, Phillips delivers a relentless critique of leftism and Islamism and their pernicious roles in the destruction of European values. She accuses the British left of developing an axis with militant fundamental Islamism because they have the same goal, the destruction of Western society and its foundation values. So this is your leftist people thinking. This is your leftist people thinking that if you have a flag, that you're a right-wing extremist, domestic terrorist type character, right? In this view, Islamist and victim groups, ushered on by the left, perceive normative or majority values as hierarchical and discriminatory, demand that majority values become subordinate to minority values, and employ various weapons to get what they want: public vilification, moral blackmail, and threats to people's livelihoods. This is all part of the movement of the radical left intelligentsia of the UK and Europe, who have replaced Christianity with a new religion of human rights and British national identity with multiculturalism. Phillips asserts that the British government has redefined the principal responsibilities of a citizen to mean responsibilities to an ideology, which is multiculturalism. But, argues Phillips, British identity is not based on doctrines of secular human rights, multiculturalism, and anti-discrimination. It is instead rooted in liberal individualism, Christianity, the common law, and the history of an island people. Similarly, she explains that traditional values and the three pillars of national identity, family, education, and church, have been overturned because of a culture war involving radical egalitarianism, individualism, mass immigration, and third worldism, secular humanism, and moral and cultural relativism, replacing national identity and objective standards of morality with self-actualization, minority beliefs and identities, a victim culture, and subjective opinions and feelings. Morality is privatized, individual conscience is universalized, national values are despised, and moral legitimacy is found in multiculturalism, minority rights, universal progressivism, human rights law, and supranational institutions such as the EU, UN, and the International Criminal Court. I'm not sure if that is the section I was looking for, actually. I was only just reading this like yesterday, so it should be fresh on my mind, the bit that I'm looking for. But that does make the good point of how no, it is that bit really, because it's just about how nationalism and pride in your country and caring about where you're from has been subverted, and all the things that have been placed in place there instead. So if you think of Indiana Jones, you know, when he's got like the golden thing and he's got a bag of sand, and he wants to take the treasure and he wants to switch the bag of sand out so it doesn't trigger the boulder trap. And it's been turned into a meme as well, hasn't it? You know, switching one thing for the other. Well, that's what they've done. So you're not allowed to be proud of your country, and you're not allowed to be proud of your Christianity and protect it and spread it around. You're not allowed to be protective of your family and your community, and it's been because now you have to celebrate and love and protect minorities and multiculturalism and plurality and importantly, relativism, which he correctly identifies and talks about there. Now, that's another thing that's been put there. There's no objectivism anymore. You're not allowed to have moral objectivity as defined by God or a biblical worldview, for example. You get this, the bit that I really like, you get this universalized conscience. So individual conscience is universalized. So you get this idea that you have to feel bad for all the poor people and war-torn countries, and it was your ancestors that made that happen, and you should feel bad because of slavery, and now you need to take care of all those people and bring them into your country and look after them and give them money and clothes and nice trainers and Primark vouchers and all this other stuff. So the individual conscience and the guilt is universalized to the European natives, but the morality is privatized. So if that minority group has a particular practice that you think is immoral, it doesn't matter because they have the right to their culture and belief systems and values and behaviors. You see what I see, the inconsistency in it. Like, you don't have a right to your culture and behaviors and moral standards and beliefs and values. You don't have a right to yours, but they have a right to theirs, and you must let go of yours and allow yours to be replaced by theirs. And if you don't want theirs to replace yours, then you at least have to not have any and just accept that they have theirs and be respectful of it and never criticize it and never badmouth it or talk bad about it. Because if you do, you're an evil, horrible, right-wing, racist, extremist, domestic terrorist, Christian. I've run out. I ran out of pejorative labels, but there's a lot of them. So yeah, that's another excellent book which deals with a similar sort of topic while we're on this subject of upside down flags and nations in distress. I really strongly recommend Claire Ellis's all 3 volumes. They're excellent. And this, but if you can't get the other 2, this one has a great introduction which summarizes the first 2 books perfectly. And yeah, and I'm just blown away. I think this is really fantastic. So get it. I'm just gonna have a sip. General Meow Meow. I looked into red, white, and blue were Masonic colors, and then started looking at countries that may have adopted those colors as being projects. Colors don't matter now, but I wondered. Well, to my mind, every country is a project. There's a small group of people who build civilizations, and part of that is countries, and they give you a flag and an anthem, and they give you a language and a calendar and holidays and behaviors and standards and expectations. They probably even give you a cuisine. I mean, you don't grow sugar in England, and yet we drink tea and eat cakes and scones, and sugar is closely associated with a lot of stuff that we do eat and drink here that supposedly are national cuisine. I mean, nowadays it's people even say chicken tikka masala is like the national dish of the country. Not fish and chips, which would make sense because, you know, we're an island nation. We can go and fish, and we can grow potatoes. So fish and chips make sense as a national dish, at least. But they give it to you. They always give it to you. They give you all this stuff. This is where I'm going nowadays. Is it's all artificial. The calendars, the history, the languages, even like the numerical system we've got a base 10 system. Why? There's other systems out there. How do we settle on this one? It's artificial. The legal systems, artificial. The laws, all of it, right? It's all man-made stuff, and then all these things are used to divide people and keep them warring and fighting against each other, so that dominant class can run away with all the shekels and the goodies. Well, no, they give us the shekels to use as money, but that's a mechanism for ripping people off and taking their property and the real wealth of the world, the actual physical, tangible assets, right? So I wouldn't be surprised to find out red, white, and blue are all Masonic colors, and all the nations that fly those colors are just building projects. General Meow Meow. Boris, remember the AI deleting your messages are actually Indians. Hasdak says, our old flag had a dragon on it. I didn't know that. That's cool though. I'd put that flag up. I don't get on board with flags very often. I don't have much to do with flags, but dragon flag. David says, your comments have been memory hold. Celine Lyon, flying the flag upside down is the same in all countries. The farmers in Holland did the same. Oh, thank you. Robert Higgins, anagram. I'm trying to be funny and not doing well. It's not your fault, and I'm glad you tried. Just because I didn't laugh doesn't mean you weren't successful. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what people are talking about when I'm reading comments on the fly on a live stream. So don't be disheartened. Hasdak says, a greater Israel project. That is something I've heard about. There's quite a big section of the map falling under that label where I saw it. General Meow Meow, it's hard to tell where the satanic destruction of Christianity begins and the corporate interests of profit margin increase ends. Maybe they were the same thing. True. Very much so. Because that is a point of Christianity, isn't it? They always walk around with a little basket like, hey, you know, chuck us some pennies. David says, hi Nick, just bought a first edition of the book Report from Iron Mountain, a Penguin book. The Rothschilds own this publishing house. Do they? I didn't know that about Penguin book. Rothschilds own it? Goodness me. Oh, now I'm curious to see what my edition is. Report from Iron Mountain. This is the Dial Press, 1967, New York. First printing 1967. This is the third printing from 1967. Yeah, I hadn't heard about this. Monica Perez was talking about it on her channel, and it sounded very interesting. So I got it, and this looked like the oldest copy that I could find. I didn't want to get any of those reprints. But I didn't know Rothschild's own Penguin. Good to know that. Very good to know it. Kalergi plan in action. All the major European cities have been ruined, says David. Well, it's funny you mentioned Kalergi, because in Volume 1 of The Blackening of Europe, you will see Chapter 1, Part 1 is Kalergi's Pan-European movement. She actually outlines a few different models for the unification of Europe. Another one is the United States of Europe, which is this book, which is Sir Arthur Salter, The United States of Europe, 1933. So it does go back a ways. But yes, Kalergi. She starts off with Kalergi, and she talks about the Fabian Society, the London School of Economics, the Labour Party, and the Frankfurt School, cultural Marxism, and then the combination of all these things. So she calls Pan-European Socialism. So Pan-European was the movement that Kalergi sort of founded and furthered. And it's all based on socialism. So the Fabian socialists come into it. The New Left, the founding of the Labour Party, and that legacy going up to the present day. And the cultural Marxism from the Frankfurt School, complementing it as well, because that's where you get all your relativism from, right? Cultural Marxism is where you get the objective morality is thrown out the window, and the private, personal, subjective morality of you and whatever you want to do and whatever's right for you comes in. So cultural Marxism is a very key part of it too. Celine Lyon says, if you don't feel like a man, maybe you're a woman. Big Pharma can help you destroy your body and put you on drugs for a lifetime. We live in brightly colored dark ages. I love it. That's really good. Brightly colored dark ages. And Hasdak says, the world is a stage. Robert Higgins, we do grow sugar here. It's suffrage beet sold as silver spoon. Thank you. Sugar beet. Tate and Kyle is from Cane Sugar. Oh, brilliant. Nice. I didn't know that. I appreciate the correction. So there you go. It's good to learn things. See, this is why I got to put myself out there and say things that are wrong so that other people can pipe up and help me get things right in the future. Okay, so the Anglo-American establishment, Carol Quigley. What's going on in here? So there's a publisher's note. Carroll Quigley, according to the publisher Stephen Zarlenger, Carroll Quigley could not find a publisher for this work. Even though he was so well known and well respected, nobody was, people like, no, we're not printing that. Are you crazy? No way. We like our careers and our income and our business success. So Stephen Zarlenger stepped up to the plate and published it in 1981. Now I've heard of this guy before, because I have a book of his, which I do want to read on the stream one day. It's called The Lost Science of Money by Stephen Zarlenger. The Mythology of Money, the Story of Power. This one is pretty pricey and hard to get hold of. And that map looks like the map on the inside of Tragedy and Hope. But the American Money Institute, Lost Science of Money, Stephen Zarlenger. The Origins of Money Systems. It goes right back. So if you want to understand money and where does it come from, what's the history of it, this is a good one to get. So I Am Told. This was another one recommended to me by Richard Grove of Grand Theft World. But the rise of capitalism in Amsterdam, transferred to England, the creation of the Bank of England, the priesthood of bankers' theology, the usury debate, colonial money, U.S. colonial monies, the greenbacks, the great deflations, the establishment of the Federal Reserve System wrecks America. That's chapter 20. Then you get Germany's hyperinflation under a private central bank, international money organizations, the European Monetary Union, and proposals for U.S. monetary reform. That, I think, would be an excellent one to read on the channel. It's a bit of a whopper, though. You're looking at like 600 pages. But I think it would be really good. I haven't done that much on money. But that's Zarlenger. I didn't expect to see his name when I opened this book, but when I found it, I thought, good to know. So this is Carroll Quigley's Anglo-American Establishment. Let me line this up properly. And again, we're looking at Cecil Rhodes, William T. Stead, Reginald Balliol Brett, who became Lord Esher. The Enigmatic Edwardian is the name of the book about him. The creation of the secret society was not a matter of a moment. Rhodes had been planning for this event for more than 17 years. These are long-term planners. In modified form, it exists to this day. Now, he wrote it in the 40s. But the appendages that they created are still going. Chatham House and Council on Foreign Relations. This stuff's still going. You can see it here, right? The name of the group. It has various names. Milner's Kindergarten, the Round Table Group, the Times Crowd, the Rhodes Crowd, Chatham House Crowd, All Souls Group, and the Cliveden Set. And what's good, he kind of gives you the different phases and the timings that it shifted from one phase to another. So here, Rhodes Secret Society, pre-1901, and then after 1901, it's Milner Group. That's my little annotation at the bottom there. Let's have a look. What we got marked up? Oh, yeah, here we go. So he says, quote, "This organization has been able to conceal its existence quite successfully, and many of its most influential members satisfied to possess the reality rather than the appearance of power." So that's the quote that we heard earlier in Hidden History. Its influential members are unknown even to close students of British history. This is even more surprising when we learn that one of the chief methods by which this group worked has been through propaganda. It plotted the Jameson Raid of 1895. It caused the Boer War of 1899. It set up and controls the Rhodes Trust. It created the Union of South Africa. It established the South African periodical, The State. It founded the British Empire periodical, The Round Table, and this remains the mouthpiece of the group. It has been the most powerful single influence in All Souls, Balliol, and New Colleges at Oxford for more than a generation. It has controlled the Times for more than 50 years, with the exception of the 3 years 1919 to 1922. It publicised the idea of and the name British Commonwealth of Nations in the period 1908 to 1918. It was the chief influence in Lloyd George's war administration and dominated the British delegation to the Peace Conference of 1919. That's a really important point. Because that was where deals and plans were agreed. It had a great deal to do with the formation and management of the League of Nations and of the system of mandates. It founded the Royal Institute of International Affairs in 1919 and still controls it. It was one of the chief influences on British policy toward Ireland, Palestine, and India in the period 1917 to 1945. It was a very important influence on the policy of appeasement of Germany during the years 1920 to 1940, and it controlled and still controls to a very considerable extent the sources and writing of the history of the British imperial and foreign policy since the Boer War. So it's quite an amazing list of accomplishments, and yeah, it's pretty shocking stuff. This is absolutely a must read, in my opinion. Let's see what else we got. What else have I? Toynbee. Yeah. So Arnold, is it Arnold Toynbee? Was a key historian for the group, and he had a son or a grandson as well who carried on doing the same sort of work. He talks here about the ideas of Arnold Toynbee, which influenced the Milner Group. These are pretty good. A conviction that the history of the British Empire represents the unfolding of a great moral idea, the idea of freedom, and that the unity of the empire could best be preserved by the cement of this idea. B, a conviction that the first call on the attention of any man should be a sense of duty and obligation to serve the state. And C, a feeling of the necessity to do social service work among the working classes of English society. These ideas were accepted by most of the men whose names we have already mentioned and became dominant principles of the Milner Group later. There you are. So serve the state, that is your principal function as a human being, and you've got a moral imperative as an English or Brit to dominate the rest of the world and get them under control, teach them how to be civilized. I'm just noticing the time and I can't believe it's got on this late. So we might have to wrap it up fairly soon. I'm just going to pause for a sip. I actually feel like I haven't got around to covering all the things that I wanted to cover. But in my house, the Wi-Fi automatically shuts off around 10 o'clock at night, and I've just noticed that we've got about 7 minutes. 7 minutes until the Wi-Fi is just going to shut down and end the stream for me if I don't do it first. The time definitely creeped up on me there, but we had a bit of a false start, and so we're kind of behind schedule. And so I think that might account for why I feel like I haven't covered all the things that I wanted to cover, because there was another book I wanted to start reading, which has been requested in my group chat a few times, and I've never read it. And I thought it'd be a good one to get on stream, particularly on this day of remembrance. But we don't have time to get to it now, so I'm going to have to do it another day. So, in conclusion, what kind of things have I got to say to wrap up? We've looked at hidden history. We've looked at Lord Milner's Second War. We've looked at the Anglo-American Establishment by Carroll Quigley, which is the book that inspired the first two. The key takeaways really is that when time passes and people are able to go digging around archived materials, things that are hidden and classified and locked up in library archives and personal collections of documentation and this sort of thing, when people are actually able to go digging through all that and to do proper history, do proper research, then they find that the actual narrative that has been recorded, etched into history, differs greatly from what the contemporary documents reveal. And this is what David Irvin did, and got him in a heap load of shit because he was looking at the contemporary documents and speaking to the people who were there and who knew people were there. It's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to listen to the authorized historians. A good example of this is recently with the knife attack here in the UK. All the talking heads came out and they said, do not speculate on the cause of this attack. In other words, wait for the authorized version of events to be published and believe that, right? Don't think for yourself. Don't ask questions. Don't look for your own answers. Don't do your own research. Remember during the Big C when these headlines were coming like, no, you shouldn't do your own research. And people who claimed to do their own research were ridiculed and teased and made fun of by the people who were just going along with what they were told on the 6 o'clock news. This is deliberate. This is done on purpose. You are discouraged and dissuaded from reading widely and thinking for yourself and following up to find answers to questions and following your own curiosity, right? This is not what they want you to do. They want you to forget. And they are worried lest we remember. And that has been what I've been trying to talk about and communicate and express by looking at these books, is that there are conspiracies. There are historically documented secret societies and groups of people who get together with plans, who don't care about your rights. They don't care about your voting. They don't care about your well-being, your livelihood, your not your ancestors, your offspring and your future generations, and your ability to send your lineage off into the future, right? They don't care about that. They will happily send hundreds of thousands of people to their certain death by concocting and engineering a world war to wipe out whole generations of young men, boys, right? They will engineer famines and wipe out millions of people. They will engineer revolutions and wipe out all the academics and intelligentsia of a certain place, because you got to get rid of them, because they can put two and two together, and they have a memory because they've done some digging and some research and some scholarly investigation into the things that happened in the past. So that is what I want to say. These books aren't the be-all and end-all of everything that's going on. I'm sure there's much more to the story. I'm sure there's blind spots and things that these books and authors have left out. I'm sure there's things that they probably didn't feel comfortable to include in the books, because that seems to be the way of the world. There's certain topics you just can't talk about. Certain people and actors and players and events that you cannot analyze and you cannot question. That was something else I was going to mention. There's an author who I didn't get to discuss, but he literally has published books that are illegal. You are not allowed to read those books. So we live in a time where books are illegal, and questioning certain events is illegal. And what does that tell you, right? So be vigilant and be discerning and read widely and keep your critical faculties switched on and look for evidence that makes sense to you, and follow your gut feeling and your intuition and your curiosity, and, you know, take a steer from some of those other aspects of our nature that we don't tend to rely on, right? We tend to think a lot, and we're in our heads and we're in our analytical mode and the evidence mode, but sometimes intuition, gut feeling, inspiration, these are also relevant. They also play a role. They are also worth at least factoring in to your learning journey, as I like to call it. So yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up there. Thank you for hanging out with me on 9/11 for this Lest We Remember special Remembrance Day edition of the Hayes Reviews live stream. We'll be back next week, continue our reading of Between Two Ages by Zbigniew Brzezinski. It's allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews if you want to support the show in any way. It would be gratefully appreciated. And sign up for continuityofcontrol.com. It's my email series where I go through these books, lots of quotes. It's a chronology covering 70 years. Carol Quigley's in there, as well as a lot of other establishment writers tracking their ideas in their own words through 12 books over 70 years, delivered to your inbox, 1 email a week. Takes about 3 to 5 minutes to read. It's a little sort of introductory crash course to these things, and I'm sure there'll be some quotes in there that will raise an eyebrow or two if you share them around and tell other people about them. So it's continuityofcontrol.com, and it's allmylinks.com/Hayes Reviews. Thank you very much for hanging out with me tonight, despite the technical hiccups at the start. It has been lovely indeed to spend this time with you. I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll see you on Friday. Next Friday coming, and have a good one. Be good to yourself, take care of yourself and each other, and I'll see you on the next one, and until then, God bless.